We're going to be covering some technical and artistic components of character sculpting, focusing on the eye. Let's go ahead and turn on our poly groups and isolate selection on the body mesh and the eye spheres. You'll notice we have poly groups for the eyelids, the front, top, and bottom eyelid. We also have an eye bag. And this is important if you're doing subsurface scattering. Some renders need a closed mesh. Let's go ahead and talk about one tip. If we up-res the eyes and reverse their normals, they're now facing inward. This is going to allow us to take the body mesh and snap it to that surface. If we hit project all, you can see the surface snapped, but now you can see they exactly align to the eye sphere. Let's look at a couple of these edges. You can see where the poly groups are differentiated. Those are very important lines between the blue and the yellow and the blue and the purple. And what we want to do is make sure that all those points line up exactly. We don't want to have anything too high or low, but these are very important shapes to look at. So if you think of these poly groups as the two edges of the lines that you want to work with, it can really help you visualize the design of your character. And see here, we're just putting a hit in at that outer corner. So oftentimes you'll have a hit that balances there and here on the upper side, and then it almost always straightens out right after that hit. This mesh does come with the ability to step down in subdivision levels, so I would not be at this higher level of subdivision and try to manipulate these points. It's much easier to do it at the lower level. You'll get a cleaner line that way. The other thing you want to watch out for is that from corner to corner of the eye, you only want one transition from thin to thick and then back to thin. Coming into side view, you can also use these polygroups to judge the shape from this direction. So you can see we really want to make sure that these lines have a nice dialogue between one another. You can see I'm pulling down this edge here to expose more of the yellow on the eyelid, and really looking at how those two lines come together. The same thing on the inside, you can see it gets a lot thinner towards the inner corner of the eye. And then looking at this outer edge of the eyelid is very important as well. Really looking at how smoothly those lines flow and how it's tighter on the inner corner, and then it really fades away to the outside here. Similar on the top, but just to a lesser degree. But you really want to look at those transitions of that outer eyelid edge. Just coming in and sculpting a little bit more of the form. I really want to make sure that all of these edges are true so we get rid of any wobbles in the surface. Looking at this edge from top view is important as well. Looking at the thick to thin of that eyelid, and also checking this bottom line and seeing where the hit is down here on the bottom of the eyelid surface. You want to make sure that the upper eyelid is almost always out further than the lower eyelid. You can see here. It's just angled back, and looking at this outer edge again from all different angles. You can see the orange polygroup denotes the eyebrow, and typically you want that to be the high point out so that the yellow surface under the eye folds in from there. So here you can see this shape. It's almost always a little flatter towards the inner part near the nose, and then it has a fullness as it wraps around to the outer corner of the eye. You want to make sure that you don't have any concavity to this area. You almost always want it to be full so that it catches the light. But that's a very difficult area that can often take quite a bit of finesse and just trying different amounts of fullness in there to see how the light is reacting to that shape. But almost always looking for a nice even transition as it becomes fuller towards the outer corner of the eye. Looking at the corners of the eyelids, you'll want to determine how far in and out these are and how far up or down. You can see they can go in or out, and the eyeball size has a lot to do with the placement of these corners. So obviously if you pull the eyes in, that can allow you to pull this outer corner back and in further if you need that corner to be back. Look at the sphere again. If you move that out, it's going to allow you to move the inner corner in further. You can also scale the eye down to to achieve the same thing. And it's not uncommon to have eyes in a stylized character that are large enough to overlap at the center. That's okay depending on your design. You also always want to look at the eye from this angle to make sure it's seated in the head. I often end up coming in here and just turning that out a little bit, pushing that back corner back and the inner corner out. Let's take a quick look at the eyebrow. I'm going to do the same thing here with these lines and make sure they're nice and parallel so that you have a nice even spacing along them. And similar idea with the eyelashes, really evaluating how those lines flow together. Let's take a quick look at the eyebrow. I like to have these at a low level of subdivision, and what we'll do is go into group by normals under polygroup. So you can see that grouped each edge. And then if we go ahead and crease by normal, we get a nice strong edge, and then you can smooth, you can move and push and pull, and you don't have to worry about having support edges that would separate. If you have more questions about sculpting the eyes or the edge flow layout, feel free to leave comments below, or you can contact me through storymold.com.